Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's Cedarville Stories Podcast with my guest, Melissa Gallagher, a graduate of Cedarville University's Industrial and Innovative Design program. I'm Mark Weinstein, and I think you're really going to enjoy my conversation with Melissa because at the core of her story is her deep faith in Jesus and helping families deal with difficult situations in life, much like Melissa and her husband Joe experienced with the birth of their oldest son, Hudson. More on that on the podcast. Melissa graduated in 2015, 3 years after Joe graduated from Cedarville, and today they reside in suburban Columbus, Ohio, and have 3 children, Hudson, Jack, and Laurel. Melissa is the owner of Wonderfully Made, a business that creates soft, cozy blankets and clothing for newborn children, and her oldest son, Hudson, who is now 6, is at the center of how the Lord guided Melissa to start this business, and a main reason why I'm talking with her today on the podcast. So join me with my conversation with Melissa Gallagher on this week's Cedarville Stories Podcast. When I learned of your story from our mutual friend Jim Stevenson at the International Center of Creativity in Columbus, I knew I needed to tell the story because it's a powerful one. But before we get to that story, I know that you're from Virginia. And I mean, we draw students, Cedarville draws students from all over the country. Virginia is one of the great states we draw students from. What motivated you or prompted you to look at Cedarville as a possible place for you to go to college?
Yeah, it's a funny story, but I was actually on a trip with one of my friends, and her dad was a lawyer who would speak at Cedarville. And so he invited myself and his own daughter, and we went on the trip with him, and we saw a couple of other schools on our weekend, girls' weekend, we called it. Yeah. And we just stopped at Cedarville, and I fell in love with it. I, at the time, thought I was going to be looking for something in architecture, but I was a little bit worried that it would be a little black and white for me. And so when I heard about the industrial design program, I texted my mom that day and I was like, I know what I want to do. Like, this is where I want to be. And so like the rest is kind of history, but it was my first like time being like, I think this is where I'm supposed to go. And I felt peace about it and just excitement. So
isn't it interesting? Because I assume when you started this trip, picking a college really wasn't front of mind for you. But so what did you see in Cedarville's Industrial and Innovative Design program that really immediately made you say, this is where I want to go? Because Cedarville is the premier Christian college for that program.
Yes. So at the time, I didn't get to experience the satellite campus in Powell because I was just on a tour with my friend.
True.
But the person that I spoke with connected me with someone on campus who was also going to that program. And I got to see some of the projects they did. And it just felt like a lot of people who were like entrepreneurial or they thought outside of the box. And that really spoke to me because as much as I liked, architecture or things like that, there's a lot of technical, very interesting things, but I think the creativity and being able to like dabble in different areas really interested me. And that was kind of a turning point for me choosing that.
Have you ever met someone more creative and innovative than Jim Stevenson?
That would be very hard to do.
He's amazing.
Yes, he is. He and Tom Balliot and the whole crew, I feel like they are each amazing and creative, and then you put them together and they come up with some amazing projects and obviously a great program. So
yeah, they do. So as a college student, I know for at least 2 years, you were on the cheer team at Cedarville University, and actually your husband Joe was as well.
Yes.
If one is that where you two met, and could you cheer? Second part of the question: could you cheer during the years that you were in Columbus as a student?
Sure. So yes, I met my husband Joe on my tour the same weekend. So
really,
big weekend, actually. I had no idea. Like, he says he remembers me and he said dibs. So I don't know. So we met that like getting started weekend and when I tried out for cheer.
Okay.
Yeah. And I did cheer for the first couple of weeks being in Columbus. I would commute. And I think a lot of people like could. I chose to spend a little more time doing my, prioritizing my major, and I had a job and some things like that. So ultimately I didn't finish cheering, but I did love it so much. And that was the only part I didn't like about being in Columbus, because the rest of it was fantastic. So
yeah. When you met Joe at Getting Started, or at least he remembers meeting you, and he said dibs. How long did it take him to ask you out, and then you guys start dating?
Okay, so that was like at my tour. I don't know if my tour was in like January or February. I was 17, like in high school still.
Okay.
So then when I actually remember meeting him in August, we didn't start dating till December.
Yeah. And then how long till you got married?
We dated till 2015. So about 4 years after graduation, like the next week we got married.
You didn't waste time. There you go. So let's transition to your personal story with Hudson, which you share on the Wonderfully Made website, which I read. And that's where I learned about how Hudson and you nearly died as a result of childbirth. He was born at 30 weeks and weighed 2 pounds.
Yes.
And what caused the early delivery? Because I think it's related to your health, wasn't it?
Yeah. So basically, we had a normal pregnancy until around 27 weeks, and we had a scan. They said that his brain was misshapen. They were concerned about his growth falling off charts, basically just failing in a lot of different categories. And so we, at the time, were obviously really stressed out and worried. But we, after seeing several specialists, they determined that he, was in fact, his brain was okay, but he was failing on all the growth charts. So they told me just to be aware, and if anything changed, come in right away, which as a first-time mom was terrifying.
Sure.
Because do you really know what's normal? I mean, it's
you
first
don't.
time for everything, but so what ended up happening was on his birthday, it was like there was no movement. There was, I would usually have like a hot chocolate in the morning, and it was just still. And he used to like kind of dance around, like it was normal.
Yeah.
So I rushed to the hospital, thinking like the worst had happened and I had missed it. And they pulled up his heart on the monitor, and I was like, oh, well, I'm just like a first-time mom. I don't know what I'm doing. But quickly, one doctor became two, the room started filling, and I realized they said, we have to get him out now or it will be too late. They said even 15 minutes and it would have been a stillbirth.
Oh.
So basically his umbilical cord was failing. He wasn't able to get nutrition. He wasn't able to get the things that he needed. And then it was later they discovered that as I was in my emergency C-section, that it was preeclampsia, that I could have a stroke at any moment. And so it was like, it's one of those things, they don't know if the umbilical cord caused the preeclampsia or if the preeclampsia caused the umbilical cord. But either way, he wasn't doing well. I wasn't doing well. So it was like a very, very fast, stressful day. And we were grateful when he was born safely. And I felt just such a relief, even though we had a long road ahead of us.
Yeah. And I should say, just for our listeners' sake, Hudson's doing well today, and so are you. So that's the good news. But during those hours or actually minutes, how terrifying was that for you and Joe?
Yeah, it was very surreal. On one hand, you're like, trying to rely on your faith and what you know and all of the goodness he's been, but also you're in, I think, a little bit of shock. So you didn't expect to have a baby that day, obviously,
Right.
like things like that so I think God's grace and shock kind of carried us through just because it's like happening so quickly.
Yeah.
But yes, it was extremely stressful and terrifying. And especially just looking back on it, you're like, oh my goodness, like I knew it was bad, but it's one of those things. So
it was life and death for both of you, right?
yes, it
So,
was.
so how long after Hudson was born did your health stabilize and improve? Was it immediate?
So after delivery, preeclampsia does begin to resolve. They kept me in the ICU for 5 more days. I was able to meet him about like maybe 40 hours later when I could actually get myself into a wheelchair and get to the NICU to see him.
Okay.
So before that, my husband would like run upstairs and, take videos for me. And because it really didn't sink in that I was a mom. Like I just felt like, I don't even know what just happened, So getting to actually like see him and hold him, it was like, oh, wow, like this, he's here. Like, so it was a really awesome moment to be able to actually see him. So
you made a remarkable statement on your website. First of all, Hudson was in the NICU intensive care unit for 70 days. And on your website, you mentioned, and I quote, "I witnessed the incredible beauty and resilience of every child in that NICU room." What did you see? Can you explain it?
As regular people out in the world, we see babies out there, and until you're a mom or a parent or you've experienced it, you don't always like take into account or appreciate how much goes into that until you're a parent. But I felt like I witnessed these little babies that should have been not born yet, fighting and striving to just make it another day. And just something about just seeing that, I don't know, it changes your perspective on how you view the world and how you view a lot of different issues going on in our world. But it just made me so thankful that he was there. We did witness a couple of babies passing while we were there. And, things like that change you forever. But it does make you hold on to hope and just hug your little ones tighter. But it was a very life-shaping period of our lives there. So,
and I can see just by looking at you on their screen that it's still moving and important to you today. Is it something you're not going to forget just not going to forget it? Knowing of the uncertainty of Hudson had to be traumatic. You also witnessed some important milestones, especially when there's a child in NICU who's battling each day for his life. Any milestone is important. And you witnessed the time when Hudson, when he was first swaddled. Can you share with us the joy that moment meant to you?
When you first arrive and your baby is, I don't know, 2 pounds like mine was, you feel like everything is so far away, like your first hospital or your first car ride or your first newborn pictures or anything else that you're looking forward to with a baby. So you do really camp out on those small victories. Every ounce matters. And being swaddled is just like, you can't dress the baby yet because they're not big enough. They have like a certain, weight kind of requirement. But the day that they can be swaddled is super fun. You can like pick out for your child to wear. And I don't know, it's just another victory after a lot of waiting for any small victories.
Yeah. During all this, if that wasn't enough, it was about the same time, I believe it was in 2017, your mom was diagnosed with cancer. So you're dealing with that stress as well. It was around this time, I believe, is when you picked up watercoloring or started doing more watercoloring, and that's what's leading to your business that you're doing today. How did painting during this time period serve as an escape from the trauma, the pain, and maybe even depression?
Well, I think a lot of it was just, circumstantially, a lot of life changes. I wasn't working full time. I wasn't doing some of the things I usually do. I couldn't go for a run or do the other things because I was still healing. And so when Hudson came home on oxygen support, I kind of wrestled with God about that, like we've been through so much and so many other kids can wean off of this and go home and be like
right.
a normal baby, but kind of. And so we are at home in our living room. We had to move all of our furniture to like the first floor, basically, because he had monitors and oxygen and in-home nurses and all of this, And so my husband actually just brought me a little watercolor set, and I could sit at the table and kind of, be there, be present, take care of what I needed to, but also kind of dream of happier times and better days. So, it did give me some peace in the middle of the chaos, I guess.
How influential was your watercoloring, dreaming of brighter days, painting bright images? How influential was that into you starting your business, Wonderfully Made?
Yeah, it never would have ever occurred to me before had I not ever picked up a watercolor brush. And I really feel like it was one of those things that like God used to heal what was, broken inside of me during all of this. I wouldn't have gotten to the conclusion that of Wonderfully Made or the idea had I not experienced that. And I think he really did give me the idea. I feel like it wasn't even on my own. It was suddenly it was in my head and I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Right. So I want to get to Wonderfully Made in a moment, but in terms of your personal healing, how long did it take for you to heal? Not just the surgery, but the mental, the emotional part as you were watching Hudson live day by day?
I think it's like an ongoing journey. Actually, I still have moments where I don't like to drive the stretch of the freeway I took that day. I still, with every time I get to do a NICU donation, I still feel emotional walking through the NICU doors. Every time I scrub in, I smell the smell of the soap or anything like that. It takes me back so quickly. I can't even explain it. So I think that I can look back and feel more joy and more peace the longer that I am able to just keep moving and enjoy the moments that I've been giving with my kids now, instead of just wondering about the what ifs or the possible outcomes.
And to use your words from earlier, a normal kid. Hudson's a normal boy today, isn't he?
By God's grace, yes, he is. Of all the things that they had at one point said could be, he's a little small.
Okay.
So, I mean, he's catching up. He just recently is on growth charts, and that's been huge. But at one point, they thought he was deaf. They thought he had cerebral palsy. They thought his brain was misshapen. I mean, the list goes on. And he's just a happy kid.
It takes me to that current song in Christian radio called Miracle Child. I don't know if you've heard that song. Yeah. When you hear that song, do you think of Hudson?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy. And we had a conversation a couple of days ago and this week actually about how he was feeling embarrassed that he was so small. And we talked about that song and just, like God has amazing plans for you. And there's no need to be worried or ashamed about that. But it is interesting now, like figuring out like it's our story together, but now he's old enough to, realize, so.
Let's talk about Wonderfully Made to bring our listeners up. So what's the purpose of Wonderfully Made, the business that you started that really came out of your experience with Hudson?
Yeah. The purpose of Wonderfully Made was to provide soft and stretchy products that I would have wanted to use on my NICU babies that had, sensitive skin and things like that. And also to encourage other NICU families going through what my husband and I went through, to be able to send a care package or a note or anything like that, just to, we can't change their circumstances or their outcome, but anything to help brighten their day. The monotony of it and just the uncertainty of it can really wear you down. So that was sort of the getting started vision for that.
How have you seen this business, and I want to really call it a ministry, impact families? Have you seen tangible evidence of impact?
I get messages a lot just thanking us for our notes or our swaddles or things like that. And just sometimes they just want to talk about, they'll message me on Instagram through our business thing and just let me know how their baby's doing, or they'll share when they're going home or things like that. And that's been really rewarding just to be even a tiny part of their story and their journey.
So when you started Wonderfully Made, you were actually the one who hand painted the designs or whatever that would go on the fabric. Is that still the case today?
Yes. All of our designs I hand paint at my kitchen table, with usually my kids all over and sitting on my lap. But yes, everything is hand painted, and I usually have a story that goes with the print, and some of them are bigger moments. Some of them are just really little mundane things of the parts of motherhood that I didn't know if I would get to experience when I had Hudson. So
what's the process? How do you go from the painted image or whatever it's going to be to ultimately getting it on fabric and then ultimately it going to somebody?
So I paint on paper with watercolor, and then I scan the work into usually Illustrator or something like that. And then I use a program to lay everything out and make sure it's how I want it. And then I work with a manufacturing team. Okay. I have a few different teams that produce a variety of different products depending on what it is. So they cut, sew, package, and ship to me. And then I actually still fulfill orders from my home. We have a storeroom in our basement that we've created a business warehouse down there for. And then I ship out to individuals or boutique owners, or some, stores that I send bulk orders to, wholesale.
Where are you sending these? Is this national, to national outlets and individuals, or is it more local?
We're all over the U.S. right now. We've got products in Maine and products in Arkansas and Indiana and just quite a few different boutiques. They're usually a small business owners. And it's been really fun to, I had a couple of custom projects. I did some swaddle with tulips for a tulip festival in Michigan. Okay. And then I did a smoker cookout product for someone Midwest that their customers are, into cooking out and all that sort of thing. So it's been a kind of an interesting variety, but it's always fun to see what that shop needs and what their customers are looking for. So
back to when you started the watercoloring, Joe gave you the little set. Had you done watercoloring before that moment, or is that something new that you just picked up?
It was new. I think, I don't know, maybe as a kid I had played with an art set or something, but it was new to me for sure. And just a lot of doodles and trial and error.
And do you have a favorite design or two that you made that you really think is pretty special for you?
Yeah, a couple of them are probably my favorite. We have one that's vegetables, and it was like right after Hudson was off of oxygen and everything. We put in a raised flower bed, and it's inspired by that time in our lives.
Okay.
So it's bright and happy, and all sorts of different vegetables. And I don't know, it was just a sweet time in our life, and it is one of our better sellers.
And did Hudson wear some of these clothes that you hand painted?
Hudson does sleep with one of our blankets every night. It's like an ice cream blanket. It's one of his staples. Each of my kids have something that they sleep with every night still. But Hudson was a little old for the swaddles,
Sure.
because I started making them after he was a little older. But yeah, they all have a little piece of it. So
that makes it even extra special that your children today get to benefit from your work and your vision that the Lord has given you. I'm curious, as we move toward the end of the program, did your education in the Industrial and Innovative Design program, did that play a role in you forming this business and the skill set that you learned in class? Did that have any impact in how you got moving in this direction?
Yes, it absolutely did. I think that creative problem solving has been one of the greatest things that they taught me in my time there. And being able to think outside the box, just even finding a manufacturer, finding things like that. I feel like I was able to research, hone in on the problems that I saw with current products in the market and why maybe I could improve on them, expand on them, and make them my own. And that has been huge. Also, just, each product that I create has to have packaging, like everything that goes along with that. So I feel like it's been helpful. I feel like I can visualize things in three-dimensional space that maybe if I had a different major, it would have been a lot more difficult. I know how to make mock-ups and just try things out and try until you succeed.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you've succeeded for sure. So
thank you.
So I live in the Dayton market. If I wanted to find some of your product, would I find it in stores or do I need to look for it online?
Yes, it's wonderfullymade-baby.com.
Okay. And I should mention that a portion of the proceeds that you earn from this goes back to NICU families. Explain that process of how you give back to people who are going through things that you went through years ago.
We are always looking for our next NICU give. So I've been able to partner with a variety of different groups and nonprofits to be able to donate products to. We partnered with like a local cookie shop that they made encouraging notes on the cookies. They were the cutest thing ever. And they went with the fall themed like swaddles and things like that. So we're always looking for people that have other small businesses that want to collaborate with us. But we love to just give them some sunshine, give them just send some encouragement their way. So that's what we've been doing. And I hope that, with each year that passes, we add a few more connections and people that we might know in different NICUs. It only takes just knowing the right person to talk to be able to send a box or send a care package. And so it's been really fun. And we hope to keep branching out more.
What kind of feedback do you receive from families who receive your blessings?
Yeah, they are just touched. Obviously, they love the story, and I think they're encouraged by the fact that there are brighter days ahead, and it's easy to get lost in the mundane. But there's brighter days ahead, and it's sometimes nice just to hear from someone who's been there, and you don't have to filter. You can explain something, and we probably get it. We know the terminology, and that's half the battle explaining what you're talking about to someone. So it's been it's been very healing for me and a huge blessing.
That's great. So in closing, Melissa, my last question as we wrap up today's program is, if there's any advice you'd like to share with families who experience some of these difficulties, any kind of difficulties with young children, what hope would you like to share with our listeners in that situation?
I guess my advice would be to find small things to be grateful for and small things that you can look forward to. I think that focusing on the future all the time can be hard in a situation like this, but celebrating any small milestones that you can, finding ways to still connect with your spouse when things are a lot about, your kids can be a whole new dynamic, especially if you're new parents. But we used to, do a movie night with Hudson, and it was just simple, but finding ways to connect, finding ways to celebrate, and then letting people in. Sometimes you're so bogged down that you don't want to, take the time to talk about what's going on and explain all of the monitors. But sometimes you do need a friend who's not in the thick of it to share what's going on and what you're worried about. And it can make a huge difference, and you can go back and feel, refreshed and like you're ready to take on the next day. So
let me close with this, because I'm curious, how have Jack and Laurel come alongside and really helped Hudson if necessary, and how has Hudson really impacted your family?
So Jack only spent 2 days in the NICU, praise God. They were all early, but they've done so well together. I think with each child, Laurel being our last, we got to keep her with us, and she didn't go to the NICU. And that was such an amazing moment. Like, this is what it's supposed to be like, this is how God made it to be. So I think that they all, I don't know. I don't even think that they really realize anything's different. Sometimes Hudson and Jack get confused for twins. And, that's the only thing that really gets under Hudson's skin, because 2 years older and he feels like he's a lot smarter than his brother. But, people ask all the time. So I feel like that's really been the only thing. And as far as changing Laurel and Jack changing, things after Hudson, I feel like if anything, it's just made us feel like, they really are not our own. We feel like God's given them to us, but that feeling of helplessness, complete helplessness that we had with Hudson, I feel like it made us really have to surrender our kids a little more than maybe we would have otherwise. And so just being open to whatever God has in store for them, I think has been one of our biggest lessons.
Yeah.
So
that's great to share. You have an amazing story, Melissa. And I know in talking with you today, at times it's been a little emotional because you've relived some tough moments. I want to thank you for being vulnerable to our podcast audience. And I love what you're doing, and I want to encourage you to keep moving forward in this direction as the Lord leads. And thank you for having a big impact in the lives of a lot of families throughout the country, if not the world. And thank you for joining me this week on the Cedarville Stories Podcast. It was great to be with you. Thank you for listening to the Cedarville Stories Podcast, brought to you by Cedarville University. You are encouraged to subscribe, share, like, and review this podcast on your favorite podcast provider. And be sure to come back next week when we have another Cedarville story for God's glory.